Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Charles D. Smith, and welcome to Undiscovered Gems. We have a guest today. Her name is Heather Pruett. Heather spent a good time of her career as an Department of Corrections officer. And today she's an intuitive natural healer. Now, I think she's learned a lot being a corrections officer to become a natural healer, but we'll get into that. Her goal is to help others heal themselves. She's just a pathway to you being healed. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today and meet you.
I'm excited as well. I'm sure we have a lot of content ready for our audience. Heather, let's start off. We want to dig in to find out, how did you go from your career, even prior to being a corrections officer, to becoming an intuitive healer? What were the basis of you becoming an intuitive healer?
So, it's interesting. When I was younger, I probably really didn't even realize that I had these abilities. And growing up, I was born in the 60s, 70s, 80s. You didn't talk about that. You didn't talk about having any type of psychic ability, any type of empathic. People would say that you were crazy, right? And so it wasn't really talked about. But when my grandmother died, my grandma on my dad's side died when I was about 10 or 12, I just knew that she was my guardian angel. And I didn't know how I knew that. I just knew that. Okay. And I kind of felt guided by her, and I would feel like she was there with me. And so as life progressed and I ended up having some issues and coming back to my hometown, which is Winslow, Arizona, and going to work at the prison as a secretary, it was because of life situations, and I didn't want to have to drive to Flagstaff every day. Well, I just always felt guided to move forward, progress myself. And I really didn't realize that I had these abilities until my mother died in 2008. And in 08, I realized I always would tell people that when my mom died, my grandmother went to her and said, "That is your child. You deal with her for a while." And again, I didn't know how I knew that, but I knew that. Okay. So fast forward to 7 years ago when my best friend died. And I'm sitting at her house. She has died. They've just come and taken the body. And I'm sitting there with the family, and I hear in my head, just plain as day, "Tell them you want to talk at the funeral." And I was like, it literally was like she was sitting right next to me. And I was like, what in the world is this? And I was like, and I'm talking to myself. I'm literally talking to myself. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she goes, "Tell them you want to talk at the funeral." And I'm hearing this in my head. And it's like her and I are having this conversation like she's sitting right next to me. She's very loud, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. And of course, I'm thinking to myself, am I crazy? And she starts yelling at me. And sends me into a panic attack. I am hysterical. I am crying. I cannot breathe. And she is like, "Tell them you want to speak at the funeral." And I was like, okay, fine. Literally, I said this, and I get up and I go to her sister. And her sister's like, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm good. If you guys want me to talk at the funeral, I'll talk at the funeral." And it stopped. As soon as I said that, it stopped. And I was like, okay, this is not quote unquote normal, right? People don't normally have this happen. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have to dive deeper into this. So I just started doing my own research. My own research was shows like The Dead Files, Ghost Adventures, all of these shows that had started coming out about supernatural spirits, abilities, all of this stuff, right? Because by 7 years ago, literally people were starting to talk about it. You had people like Teresa Caputo that were starting to come out and say, "I have these abilities. I can talk to these people," the whole 9 yards. And so that started me on a whole different journey, because in the process of this, I was starting to move away. I was eligible to retire from the prison. And so I had retired and went back under a different retirement system and getting ready to do that. So it was kind of like my life was starting to separate and shift, and I was going a whole different direction. Well, in 2020, while I was working at the prison, we had an inmate who committed suicide. And he had the same last name as me, but different spelling. So he spelled his with ITT and I spelled mine with ETT. And after that, I started having really significant pain. People could not touch me. I was in pain. And I was guided by my mother to go see a healer in Flagstaff. I didn't know why I was going there, but I was interested in seeing what Reiki was. And I was guided to go see her. And my very first session, she was like, you have attachments on you. You are way open. You have got to start doing some protection work on yourself. And that was the key for me, because it was like, if I'm having these type of problems, then other people have to be having the same type of problems, right? I'm not the only one that's going to be having these issues. So I was like, so she went in and did work with theta healing, which is a modality that was created by Viana Stavel. And she did a bunch of work. She disconnected me. And so I went through one of her classes because I was like, well, I might as well learn how to work on this myself, right? And I was like, I might as well just move forward and start helping people, because during that class, we did a divine timing reading. And my divine timing reading was that I was sent to do healing and help people. And I could see all of these people that were around that could use my help, right? And so when I decided to leave the prison permanently, because I was bringing my dad home he was in a home in Las Vegas, and I was bringing him home because he was sick and he was going to be dying here. I decided to leave the prison, and I just started focusing on my healing journey for myself and for others. So by doing this, people can relate to me because all of us have similar, not the same, but similar experiences that, we can bounce off of and work through. I mean, I work with people all the time that have attachments, they have abilities, and they aren't using them. And, and it's like, let me help you get comfortable with this so that you can move forward with your progression. And so that's kind of how I took the whole step from corrections to let me help you heal.
Right. No, it's fascinating. And the one thing you mentioned is it wasn't anything that you talked about, in the 70s, in early 80s, but today people talk a lot about, like you said, there's so many shows about it that it's a comfortable space. Now,
Correct.
when you mention attachments, what do you mean by attachments? I kind of have an idea, but what elaborate on that a little.
Okay, so in the case of the inmate, okay, when his soul, higher self, left his body, if a spirit does not go through their death door, they are known as wayward spirits. Okay, there are wayward spirits all over the place, and they can go on and basically attach to a living person. And start working on draining their energy. It's just like if you hooked into somebody, like if you took a hook and just hooked it in to somebody. And people may or may not know that they even have those. And being the psychic medium that I am, I have to protect myself because spirits do want to tend to attach into me. Some of them are looking for help. Some of them are looking to get, to do whatever it is they may want to do. But he was it. And so what happened was my healer transitioned him and sent him through the death door so that he would move on in the process. And people may not take their death door for different reasons. You know what I mean? So one thing that I do is I do work on the deceased. So I will transition them. I can do energy work on them if I need to. And it's interesting because many times when I'm working on a person, like a living person, especially if I'm dealing with generational stuff that has been
Hmm.
passed down, I may have one of their deceased family members come and be part of that, what I'm working on, that energy, so that I can heal them as well as the person that I'm working on, which helps with the generational healing. Because there's a lot of spirits that even when they transitioned, there was work that they wanted to be done and they weren't able to get it done here. We've done work, we meaning me and my healer have done work on my mother and my father, as well as myself. And so many times people have family members that need this same work done that they need done. So we just lump it all together so that there's a group healing so that it doesn't follow them in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Heather, while you were explaining that, I visualized literally a scene with Whoopi Goldberg and Patrick Swayze in Ghost. You were saying that
Absolutely.
you work on the deceased, and that visual, that scene in the movie came to mind when they were
Absolutely.
with a group of people trying to contact their deceased family members. So is that sort of what? Not to say that that is the setting, but is that what you do?
That is one of the things that I do. Yes.
Right.
Yes. And sometimes I have a client that is brought to me by the deceased family member.
Mm.
And it's like coincidences don't happen in my world. Nothing is a coincidence for me. So if something is brought to me or if something happens, I'm like, okay, I need to file that away because obviously there was a reason why I was shown that. And 9 times out of 10, whatever that was comes back to me. And I needed that information because I'm going to be working on somebody and I needed that information in order to do it. So one of the things that I do is I do psychic mediumship. Um, I do healing work on people. So we go in and we will do energy shifts. We work on your DNA. So in one of my podcasts, I talked about how our body is like a computer and how, we get stuck in the same thing if we don't update it and upgrade it. And changing our DNA and removing the trauma that we've had and changing the DNA so it doesn't continue to live on that same trauma is one way we can work on healing people. And we can do the same thing with the deceased as well as the living, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So the adjective, the action, intuitive healer. Why did you give yourself the name intuitive healer?
Because intuitively, I am given messages. So intuitively, I receive messages. So I will, I'll give you an example. So we were going on an Alaskan cruise with friends, and I intuitively felt like I wasn't supposed to go on the same flight as these two friends. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, I'll not go on this flight. Well, just like a week before we were supposed to go, I'm talking to this friend and I was like, what time are you flying out? Because I just felt like I needed to call her and talk to her about this flight. So I was trying to coordinate something. Again, not a coincidence. And she goes in and she's like, oh my Lord. She goes, we're not flying out till 5:30 at night. And of course I'm thinking, oh, I'm glad I'm not on that flight. But I'm like, thank goodness for that. But I was like, you may want to look at changing that flight. If it were me, I would look at changing that flight because intuitively I felt like there was a problem with that flight. And sure enough, there was a problem with their flight and they got stuck in Seattle for like 2 hours longer than they were supposed to.
Hmm.
And I was like, and so psychic and intuitive kind of goes together, except that intuitively I get these feelings. Intuitively, it's like I should do this or I shouldn't do this. And it's more of a feeling where the psychic portion, a spirit is actually talking to me. And so that's how I kind of differentiate the two. And when I'm working on clients, intuitively, I can feel things in them. So I can feel like their fear, or I can feel like their anxiety, or I'll feel something and I'll be like, are you feeling this right now? And they're like, yes, I am feeling that right now. But that's the intuitive side. That's not the psychic side, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you do work in different areas, trauma, dark energy.
Absolutely.
You help people develop their intuitive gifts,
Mm-hmm.
removal of things. Let's talk about a little bit. In today's environment, after COVID, every college needs counselors to deal with all sorts of things that college students and teenagers are going through. As we get older, we get into our 40s, we look at our past and we start dealing with trauma. So you have all those things that come your way. Is there a certain process that you take to deal with clients based on all the different things that you do? Is there kind of a certain process at the beginning to deal with them, or is everything different? So let's talk about trauma, energy, dark energy, those
So
things.
let's
How
talk
do you
about
work?
let's
Okay.
talk about trauma. Okay. So so I'm going to talk about energy cutting first. Okay. So the basis of every session that I start with starts with cutting something from the person, meaning
Okay.
we cut the energy cord that is connected to that, and then we replace any belief systems. So along with that trauma, and this would work for dark energy, this would work for anything that I do. Trauma is just the main one that I'm going to use right now. There are belief systems linked to that. So if I am connected to, I'm going to say, I'm just use a car accident because it comes to my head. So I've been in a major car accident and I have trauma from that car accident, right? I may have a belief system that I am in danger anytime I get into a car. So
I see.
that belief system has to be removed, resolved, alchemized, and replaced with the knowledge, feeling, and knowing what it's like to feel safe in a car, knowing
Hmm.
that if it's not your time to go, it's not your time to go, right? Then we would go in and we would cut, and I've actually done this with a client. I've gone in and I've cut them from the people that caused the accident, the people that were in the accident, cut them from the car, cut them from the physical place where they had the accident, because all of that is hooked into this trauma. Okay. So we cut all those energy cords. So, I'm fearful. I would love this car. I'm attached to this car. I'm so angry that they wrecked my car. We need to cut you from that car. Let's cut that energy cord from that car, right? Make it to where that car is not so important to you anymore, because an energy cord is like a garden hose. So it connects one end to you and one end to the person, place, or thing that you're connected to. And you can feel the energy, because everything, no matter what it is, has energy. Whether it's material, whether it's non-living, whether it's living, everything has an energy to it. So what we're trying to do is cut that cord between you and that whatever that is, so you stop feeling that energy. Once you do that, it releases you from that. Okay.
Hmm.
And really, for me, I will tell you, when I finally got cut from my mother after 14 years after her being dead, it was a whole totally different experience. My grief all of a sudden was able to finalize. Um, and so when my dad died, I got a hold of my healer that day and I was like, I need to be cut. She's like, you have to wait 72 hours.
Really?
He's in transition. You have to wait 72 hours. And I'm like,
Oh,
I'm not happy with that, but okay. And
okay.
so she went up and did it, right? Because in our modality, time is a constraint we put on each other, on ourselves, not, universe source. That Wednesday, because he died on a Saturday, she went in and did it on Saturday. That Wednesday, I woke up and I was like, I'm cut. I can feel the cut. I wasn't crying. I wasn't blubbering. I was able to focus on his funeral. Um, and so because of that, I was able to start functioning better. And by cutting whatever it is that you are connected to that has caused trauma, death, grief, whatever, what it does is it releases you from that. You're no longer feeling that energy. And because of that, it allows you to just go ahead and move forward. Anytime a person dies, I recommend getting a cutting. Anytime you change jobs, I recommend getting a cutting. Me and my healer had to do a lot of work cutting me from the Arizona Department of Corrections and everything there. There's a lot of trauma that I suffered working there. You see a lot of stuff in a prison, and we had to cut me from that to help me move forward to where I am now. So it always starts with energy cutting. Usually somebody comes to me because there's something that they need to be cut from. And so we do that first, and then we move forward in our further sessions working on belief systems, because what will happen is they'll be cut by this and they're like, okay, now I need to work. And then something will happen. They'll be like, I had this trigger, and I'm like, okay, let's go in and work on that, And so it may be belief systems, it may be cutting, it may be removing, because, words have power, Charles. And so we say things and do things that create contracts, oaths, vows, commitments that have to be cleared. And so that's another thing I do during sessions is we go in and we clear all of that out. If you have karma with a person, I can go in and mark that done so it doesn't follow in the future. And so there's a lot of different variables that go on, but it normally stems when somebody usually comes to me, it's about we're working with trauma and we're cutting you from whatever that trauma based is. And then the healings go on from there, depending on what they need.
Right. I'm listening to you, and life coaches, counselors, what you do, it's all the same, but a different variation. You say cutting, a life coach says you need to release some of the anxiety and things that you have. Another counselor might say, we need to go back there and deal with whatever it is and to move forward. So it's all a different variation, but all getting to the same root in someone healing or moving forward in their life. Heather, who was your mentor? Did you have mentors helping you during this time when you were trying to, I want to say, perfect or deal with your craft?
Oh, I'm still working on it. But my mentor is a woman named Dawn Marie out of Flagstaff. And she's the one that I was guided to go to have that, to be dealt with when I had that severe attachment. And she's the one that's done a lot of classes that I've gone through. She's the one that I attended Reiki, did all my Reiki classes through. And she is one that I can actually call and just bounce stuff off of her if I need to, because healers need healers. Okay. So I can go in and do some work on myself, but I don't like working on myself. Right. So I am like, I need to call Dawn Marie. I need to go have a session with her, because I'm like, I don't want to look at this stuff in myself, but she can see it. And then her and I work through it and we cut it. Right. So I tell her all the time, healers need healers. So you need a healer. But it's true. There's times where we're just like, we really are not comfortable working on ourselves. And so that's where I'm here to help. I'm here to witness them. I don't heal the people. I don't heal my clients. What I do is we do the work and they do the shifting, and I just witness that. So they really are healing themselves. I'm just helping them through the process. And so there's times where I need help getting through the process.
Right. Now, with our audience, there are people out there that are listening and they're saying, I think I need to be healed from X, Y, and Z. How would they contact you? How would you help them? What would be the next step if someone had that thought?
So I actually offer a free 15-minute consultation on my website. They are all done via Zoom, and they can actually sign up for this 15-minute session, and we just talk like you and I are talking right now. Tell me what's going on. What kind of issues are you having? I will usually ask, do you feel like you have any type of intuitive or psychic abilities? Because that's important. It's important to know whether or not they feel like they have those or not. If they say like they think they do, I'm like, how comfortable are you with working with them? And most of the time they go, yeah, I'm not comfortable with that. And so I'm like, that is something that we need to work on then. But they can call me and we just have a conversation like this. I listen to what's going on and then I'm like, okay, this would be my recommendation. I recommend we go in and we cut. I recommend that we go in and we do this. I recommend we go in and do that. And then they are able to book on my website or they're able to contact me and book a website. All of my sessions, everything that I do can be done in person or virtually. You do not have to be near me in order for me to work on you. I have clients in England that I have energetically gone and cleaned. I've actually gone to their house energetically and cleaned their flats because what we've been working on required me to go in and make sure there wasn't anything in there. And so I can do that as well. So I call it astroplaning. So I can actually astroplane and see what's going on. So I have literally distanced cleaning houses of negative energy without actually having to be physically in the place.
And with a client coming to you, talk to us. What at some point in time within your profession, I'm sure there's a client or two that has come and you said, you know what, I've done all I can, and I can't do any more, mainly because they're not participating. Have you experienced that with any of your clients?
If they're not ready for the healing process, then what I do is not going to work. What I witness isn't going to work because they have to do the work, right? So I do not say to a client normally, let me throw that out. Normally, I don't say to a client, I need to see you weekly. Okay. What I tell them is when you are ready for your next session, get a hold of me, book your session. Okay. I've had clients that have waited a year and then they've come back to me and been like, oh, okay, I've got another issue, right? I have clients that book fairly regularly. I have clients that if they need something, they book a session with me. I liken trauma and triggers to a Chinese elm. So Chinese elms have a huge root system, and you chop one down and pretty quick another root system pops up, right? So you always get these little pop-ups of these Chinese elms. So what we're doing is we are, cutting down your tree and we are taking off these limbs or these roots. So something may come up and you're like, oh man, that just triggered me and I need to get that worked on. They can book a session with me. If they don't agree with what I've done, then you're not required to come back to me. I have worked with therapists who have sent me a client. I've done basic work on what they needed, and then they've moved on, which is okay, because my healing work can be done in conjunction with medical doctors, therapy, anything like that. So it works in conjunction with that. So if you're in therapy, I'm not going to tell you to stop your therapy. What I'm going to tell you is whatever you're working on in therapy, if it's not clearing and you need help, then come see me. Let's work on it on a more spiritual, universal level, and then go back to your therapy and continue working from there. And so people can come see me once, they can come see me numerous times. It just depends on how they feel and how ready they are to receive the healing.
Right. Well, let's tell the audience, make sure you're ready before you come see Heather. So Heather, we're about to close the show. Time went by so fast.
So fast.
Why don't you talk to our audience and just tell them about your understanding of what they need to know that they need healing?
So know that you are important and you deserve to do some healing work on yourself to make you a better person. So I am here to help you with that. I'm not going to do it for you, but I am willing to help you help yourself to do healing and become a better you and a happier you.
Awesome. Awesome. Heather, 2024 Professional of the Year, and now we know why. Thank you for imparting your knowledge on our audience. It was a great show. Appreciate your wisdom, and I'm sure people are now thinking about healing themselves after hearing you. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, Charles. Have a wonderful day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Undiscovered Gems with our host, Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds. Brought to you by Pods Entertainment Group.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.